Imagine for a moment a country where the American dream has turned into a survival scenario, where entire cities are emptying out not because of a war or a famine, but because of a silent and brutal collapse of the local economy and culture. In the United States, we are currently witnessing a terrifying phenomenon that no one saw coming on such a scale. A massive exodus that is redrawing the map of the world's most powerful nation. This isn't simply moving for a change of scenery, it's a desperate escape. Schools are closing their doors, not because they lack funding, but because there are literally no longer any children to sit in the classrooms. Retirees aren't coming anymore, young professionals are fleeing, and even crypto investors, who usually seek opportunities everywhere, are turning their backs on these regions. What no one tells you on the evening news is that it's not just about seeking sunshine or cheaper rent, but about escaping a cultural collapse, infrastructure rotting in place, economies turning into ghost towns, and in some tragic cases, land physically disappearing under rising waters. We're going to dive into the guts of these 10 states that Americans are permanently abandoning, exposing the brutal and bizarre truths behind this trend. You're going to discover the place where your neighbor is more likely to be a deer than a human, the Paradise Island locals are fleeing like the plague, and the state that literally pays you to stay but still can't hold on to its residents. If you think you know where America is collapsing, prepare to be surprised, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why packing your bags and leaving might just be the smartest or even the only decision possible for survival. Let's start our journey into the East Coast's tax hell. New Jersey holds a record no one wants. It's the state the most Americans are actively trying to flee, with more people leaving last year than from any other state in the country. It's an absolute demographic hemorrhage, where even the rats seem ready to pack their bags. New Jersey, the land of Bruce Springsteen, all-night diners, and highways that require fighter pilot reflexes to survive, is losing its residents at a dizzying speed. To understand why, you need to look beyond the suburban charm and proximity to New York. It's become less of a garden state and more of a real-life escape room where you pay exorbitant property taxes just for the right to play. The numbers are overwhelming. More than 65,000 people abandoned ship in 2023 alone, representing an exodus rate of almost 2,000 people per week. Imagine a small town disappearing every month, simply evaporated. The main reason is financial. Property taxes there are the highest in the nation, with a staggering average of $9,500 per year, and in some towns, it's far worse. Add to that a cost of living that is 14% above the national average and a median rent for a studio in Hoboken that hovers around $3,000, and you get a perfect recipe for personal disaster. The job market is decent, sure, but only if you're willing to sacrifice your mental health on 90-minute commutes to a cubicle in Manhattan. You're taxed to death, stuck in tolls, and your reward is a view of New York you can no longer afford to appreciate. Even long-time residents, those who grew up there, are throwing in the towel, not just for financial reasons, but to preserve their mental health. It's the classic New Jersey trap. You stay for the nostalgia, but you leave when you realize nostalgia doesn't pay the mortgage. Imagine yourself drinking burnt coffee at 7 in the morning, surrounded by honking cars, trying to merge into impossible traffic while dodging potholes, under a gray sky and with taxes strangling you. It's a state that serves as an exit plan. People work there to accumulate money, but their ultimate goal is always to leave for somewhere else, like Pennsylvania or Florida, where they can keep more of their hard-earned paycheck. If New Jersey is a tax trap, our next destination is a systemic poverty trap from which it seems impossible to escape. Mississippi is seeing its population shrink faster than a paycheck on payday, and the situation is so critical you'd think the state motto had become, "We'll pray it gets better." It's the land of blues, barbecue, and a culture so rich it could be bottled. But it's also the bruised heart of American inequality. Since 2010, Mississippi has lost more residents than it has gained every single year, without exception. The reasons aren't complicated. They are systemic, generational, and frankly, soul-crushing. Let's look under the hood of this crisis. The median income hovers around $53,000, the lowest in the entire country, while the poverty rate is close to 19%, nearly double the American average. The education system is ranked 47th nationally, and access to healthcare is in the bottom 5, with the highest infant mortality rate in America. It's a grim picture where the cost of living, though low, cannot compensate for the total lack of opportunities. Half of the state's counties are officially designated as being in persistent poverty, which isn't a metaphor, but an actual federal classification. Young people leave to find opportunities, old people stay for the roots, and those in between survive however they can. Factories close, hospitals shut down, and infrastructure rots in place, as evidenced by the water crisis in Jackson that made headlines. It's a tragic paradox. You can't rebuild a future when you spend your time fighting against the past. The crime rate, particularly homicides, is among the highest in the nation, while social investments are among the lowest. Mississippi is living proof that you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps when the boots cost more than your hourly wage. In Jackson, the homicide rate is alarming, whereas just across the border in Madison, Alabama, you find one of America's safest and fastest growing cities. It's the same region, the same climate, but two different worlds. People are choosing safety and salaries over culture and history, and that's a choice more and more Mississippi residents are making every day. Let's leave the heat of the South for the relentless cold of the far North. Alaska, with its infinite spaces where you could disappear for days without anyone noticing, is losing its mythical appeal. It's a wild, majestic land that makes you want to drop everything and live off-grid. But the statistics tell a different story, one of a continuous exodus since 2013. Nearly 40,000 people have left, and this isn't just a demographic decline, it's a radical shift in atmosphere. Alaska is sold as the last frontier, America's untamed masterpiece, but the daily reality is much harsher. The cost of living there is 24% higher than the national average, and grocery shopping in rural areas can cost twice as much as in Seattle. The violent crime rate is one of the highest in the United States, surpassing even notoriously dangerous cities like Detroit. And then there's seasonal depression, which isn't a myth, but a brutal biological reality. In Barrow, the sun literally doesn't rise for 65 days straight. The state tries to retain its residents by paying them an annual check from the Permanent Oil Dividend Fund. But let's be honest, that amount barely covers the heating bill for an Arctic winter. Living in Alaska is like being in a relationship with someone physically stunning but emotionally unavailable. There's beauty everywhere, but also that constant feeling that the world could collapse on you. Earthquakes, extreme isolation, and the fact that basic services like medical care or internet can disappear when you need them most create permanent stress. If your idea of grocery shopping involves a snowmobile, 2 bear encounters, and a headlamp, you don't need a supermarket, you need reinforcements. And let's not forget the mosquitoes, which are so big and numerous that disillusioned locals consider them the official state bird. Alaska isn't losing its residents because it's failing, but because the wilderness couldn't care less if you stay or not. And many people have finally gotten the message. It might be time to return to civilization. Heading back down the East Coast, we find a state that should be the crown jewel, but is turning into a dusty museum of past opulence. Connecticut has more hedge funds than high schools, but it still can't afford the luxury of keeping its population. It's home to Yale, the Gold Coast estates, and those towns where everyone seems to own a Volvo and a vineyard membership. It's rich, right? That's the reputation. But behind that colonial charm and generational wealth, it's a state people are silently fleeing. And we're not just talking about broke young people dreaming of Brooklyn, but retirees, professionals, and even business owners. Connecticut is among the top 5 states for highest cost of living in the country, with property taxes exceeding $6,500 per year on average and climbing above $10,000 in some towns. Net emigration has been declining every year since 2013, resulting in a net loss of $12.6 billion in revenue over the last decade. Job growth has stalled, wages have stagnated for years outside of finance and healthcare, and infrastructure is slowly crumbling. Even the trains seem nostalgic for a bygone era. The final blow is that half the people leaving Connecticut are heading south, not to seek sunshine, but to escape taxes. The towns look perfect, with their white picket fences and ivy-covered libraries, but underneath, it's stagnation and a wealth gap that resembles an economic horror movie. Connecticut charges luxury-level taxes for discount supermarket-level experiences. You'll pay $14 for an oat milk latte and be judged for not wearing the right brand of jacket, all while living in towns that seem to have been unplugged in 2009. Stuck between New York and Massachusetts, Connecticut is losing more people than both its neighbors, despite being quieter and having more trees. It's a place built for a type of wealth that no longer lives there, leaving behind a sense of emptiness and accumulating for sale signs. Let's radically change scenery to the Midwest, where a modern-day gold rush has turned into an icy ghost town. North Dakota was once the Wild West of modern oil. Around 2012, it was the fracking gold rush. People flocked for six-figure paychecks, and housing was so scarce you could rent a simple trailer in Williston for $2,500 a month. Fast forward to today, and the boom has slowed. People have fled, and what's left looks like a party no one cleaned up. Net emigration exceeded 5,000 residents in 2023, and the oil and gas job market has dropped by more than 8% in 5 years. The weather is a punishment. More than 50 days a year where temperatures drop below zero, a cold that freezes your eyelashes and kills your car battery out of sheer malice. The population density is less than 11 people per 2.59 square kilometers, which means isolation is total. Sure, rents have dropped. You can find a 3-room apartment for $800, but when your only nightlife option is a gas station and a prayer, that's not exactly a perk. Isolation can seem romantic until it's 3:30 p.m., already pitch dark, and your only social interaction is arguing with your own echo. The economic fallout hit hardest in rural towns that had bet everything on oil. Once prices dropped, jobs vanished, and the people who came for the opportunity left to find better weather, or just a place where Amazon doesn't consider delivery a seasonal miracle. North Dakota is perfect if you want to feel alone without technically being alone. But for the majority, it's an endurance test few want to take. Meanwhile, Florida, with all its chaos and humidity, attracts more people every day than North Dakota sees in a year. It's strange how a place with alligators seems less isolating than a place with bison. Speaking of water and disasters, let's head down to the Deep South, where resilience has an expiration date. Louisiana loses the equivalent of a football field of coastal land every hour, and about 30,000 residents annually. It's a state with soul. You hear it in every jazz note and taste it in every gumbo dish. But it's also a state drowning in problems. Since 2016, Louisiana has lost nearly 200,000 residents, ranking third for emigration and last for infrastructure quality. The average household income is well below the national average, and the violent crime rate is one of the highest in the country, just behind Washington, D.C. But it's not just a story of hurricanes, it's a story of exhaustion. You can only rebuild your life so many times before the nails no longer hold. Louisiana is culturally rich, having given the world jazz and Creole cuisine, but it's economically broke. The cost of living is low, but so are the wages, and the insurance market is imploding. Major companies are withdrawing after years of billion-dollar losses due to storms, leaving homeowners with insurance bills that sometimes cost more than their rent. In New Orleans, a city famous for its resilience, more than half of tenants are crushed by costs, paying over 30% of their income just for a roof over their heads. Resilience has its limits. People love Louisiana, but love doesn't pay for flood insurance. When your roof collapses for the third time, courage turns into a desire to leave. New Orleans has seen its population drop by more than 80,000 people since 2005, and many of those who stayed after Katrina are now quietly leaving, unable to continue fighting gravity and bureaucracy at the same time. It's a place where the air is so thick it feels alive, but beneath the party, there's this dull ache, the feeling that the city is running out of second chances. Charm doesn't stand a chance against climate change and crumbling levees. Louisiana isn't dying, it's drowning in water, in debt, and in fatigue. Let's head back to the Midwest for another example of disastrous management. Illinois has lost nearly 800,000 residents over the last decade, which is equivalent to the entire city of Seattle packing up and leaving without looking back. It was once the backbone of the Midwest, with its railroads, industries, and the power of Chicago. But today, it's become a case study in how to burn through the patience of its citizens. Illinois lost more residents between 2020 and 2023 than any other state. The reason? Property taxes are the second highest in the United States, averaging $9,500 per year in some counties. The state's debt amounts to more than $140 billion in unfunded pension obligations. Add to that a crime rate in Chicago that remains about 3 times higher than the national average, and you understand why even the suburbs are packing up for neighboring Indiana. Illinois has a lot to offer: arts, food, world-class universities, but none of that matters when you're drowning in bills just to exist. People don't leave because they hate the place. They leave because staying feels like a financial hostage situation. The mood is turning bitter. You pay thousands of dollars in taxes and still drive over potholes the size of craters. DMV lines are slower than glaciers melting, and Chicago slaps you with $75 parking fines just for blinking near a fire hydrant. It's often said you get what you pay for, but in Illinois, you pay for what you used to have. And now, you just get a shrug in return. Chicago offers amazing pizza and even deeper debt. Illinois didn't collapse overnight. It's a death by 1,000 small taxes, and now the emergency exits are crowded. And now let's return to West Virginia, a state that's emptying out faster than its coal jobs are disappearing. West Virginia was once a symbol of American grit, miners, and mountains. Today, the numbers hit like a mournful ballad in a minor key. The state's population has dropped every decade since 1950, and last year alone, it lost more than 18,000 people, the equivalent of a small town vanishing. The median household income is around $55,000, one of the lowest in the country. And although unemployment is close to the national average, the labor force participation rate is dead last, barely 54%. Basically, half the state isn't working, and half of that half wants to leave. Everyone loves to romanticize the Appalachians, the porches, and the fireflies, but behind that nostalgic filter, the reality is harsh. Access to healthcare is ranked 49th, opioid overdoses are among the highest in America, and half of the state's counties are considered distressed economies. Young people are fleeing. The median age is now 43 years old, and 1/3 of college graduates leave within 5 years. Locals joke that if you stay long enough, the mountains start to look like prison walls. The state feels trapped by its geography, its economy, and a history it can't rewrite. The irony is that the cost of living is low, 17% below the national average, and you can find homes for less than $150,000. But the job market can't even support those modest mortgages. It's like owning a boat without water. It's nice, but you're stuck on dry land. Every politician promises revitalization and leaves as quickly as they arrived, while locals patch roads with duct tape and pray the Wi-Fi holds up. If stubbornness were a gross domestic product, West Virginia would be prosperous. But for now, it's an adjacent paradise with optional internet. Let's now head to the most idyllic place on the planet, which turns out to be a financial nightmare for those who live there. Hawaii is seeing its population shrink so fast you'd think the islands were floating away. It's not the ocean carrying people away, it's the rent. Everyone's fantasy ends with a move to Hawaii. Pineapples, surfboards, sunsets. But here's what no one tells you. Locals aren't buying that dream anymore, they're selling it. Hawaii now has one of the highest emigration rates in the United States, with over 12,000 residents leaving last year. The median home price is $1.1 million. The average rent for a one-bedroom is $2,400, and groceries cost 67% more than the continental average. A gallon of milk, approximately 3.79 liters, costs almost $8. It's not paradise. It's Stockholm Syndrome with palm trees. You think island life is all coconuts and calm breezes until you realize half the population is working 2 jobs just to keep their heads above water. The cost of living is so brutal that even nurses and teachers are abandoning ship. Living here feels like winning the lottery and then immediately being taxed at 110%. Tourism is booming, but wages have been stuck since 2005. It's not just the money, it's the housing shortage and mainland developers turning neighborhoods into vacation experiences. Ironically, the people leaving are the very ones who make up Hawaii's culture. When paradise becomes unaffordable, you get empty houses owned by investors and schools with shrinking class sizes. Locals are moving to Vegas in such large numbers that they now call the city the Ninth Island. It's become a real migratory meme. The emotional cost is enormous. Generations are being uprooted from their ancestral lands. Places where people grew up surfing and farming are now luxury rentals with no local parking. Hawaii continues to top lists of the best places to visit, but try living there. Everything costs triple, even sadness. You'll pay $25 for a bowl of poke and $60 for gas just to get to the store that's out of stock. Hawaii isn't losing its beauty, it's losing its balance between dream and reality, visitor and resident. That's why so many locals are saying aloha, but not to say hello. Finally, we arrive at the most extreme case, the place more than 500,000 people have left since 2010, Puerto Rico. Technically, it's the Caribbean. Legally, it's America. But emotionally, it's that relative you only remember when there's a hurricane. Puerto Rico has beaches so pristine they look photoshopped, music that sounds like sunshine, and an atmosphere so relaxed that time doesn't pass, it vibrates. But for the people who live there, it's paradise with an impossible payment plan. The truth is that Puerto Rico has been bleeding residents for years, with more than 14% of the island's population having left. This isn't for adventure or pleasure, but for economic survival and basic infrastructure. Unemployment hovers around 6%, double the American average, and the poverty rate is 41.7%. That's not a typo. The median household income is around $21,000, lower than any American state. And the power grid, let's just say it has commitment issues. In 2022, major outages lasted for entire days. Living in Puerto Rico is like dating someone gorgeous, broke, and who constantly forgets your birthday. It's not just a matter of statistics, it's the emotional shock of living in a place tourists adore, but your own country forgets. You're American enough to pay taxes and serve in the military, but not enough to get equal disaster aid or voting rights in Congress. It's not a state in decline, it's a place that was never able to fully rise. If you live in Puerto Rico, your patience better be solar-powered, because the electricity certainly isn't. You lose power so often your refrigerator has trust issues, and your phone is at 3%, but you've become the generator. The streets flood as soon as someone sneezes near the coast. People aren't just tired, they're tired of being tired. Every hurricane isn't just a storm, it's a reminder that no one is coming to help. Puerto Rico doesn't just feel forgotten, it feels ghosted by the country it's legally married to. People are leaving not because they want to, but because it's becoming increasingly difficult to stay. It's the ultimate proof that scenery isn't enough when the foundations of society collapse. What we see through these 10 examples is a fundamental shift in the American mindset. The prestige of an address or the beauty of a landscape is no longer enough. Americans are voting with their feet, fleeing exorbitant costs, insecurity, and the collapse of public services. They are no longer looking to succeed in historical major centers, they are simply looking to survive. The question that remains is, where will they go when these new havens also become too expensive? Tell me in the comments, which state would you never set foot in?